Believe it or not, flying cars have been in development for over 100 years. Airplanes predate America's interstate highway system, and in the early days, flying cars seemed more realistic to people than roads that could carry a car long distances. Those people, they were wrong. They were really, really, really wrong. Despite intensive effort and some close calls, flying cars have yet to become a reality, and we're all extremely disappointed. There are a few key reasons that we don't have flying cars yet. First of all, they're stupid. Second, they're dangerous. Third, they're impractical. Fourth, you're an asshole. Solving problems that don't exist. Neil deGrasse Tyson had an excellent analogy to explain the problem that flying cars allegedly solve. Imagine you're on a road that is exactly the width of a car. You're moving along one dimension, and your speed is restricted by the speed of the slowest car in front of you. To solve this problem, we can extend the range of motion into the second dimension. By adding another lane to the road, you now have the option to not only drive forward, but also to shift left and right and pass other cars on the road. The ability to drive freely over a two-dimensional plane decreases congestion, allows for everyone to move faster, except for that one idiot driving 20 miles an hour below the speed limit that would have clogged up our single-lane road. Alright, now consider places like Los Angeles or Miami, where highways extend as many as 6 lanes wide. The massive amount of cars still results in these roads becoming congested. You suddenly find yourself yearning for the ability to travel in the third dimension to increase your elevation and bypass the entire problem. And to this end, of course, you're dreaming about a flying car to solve your problem. The thing is, we already have multiple solutions for this. If we want our cars to be able to travel in the third dimension, we could build multi-level bridges and tunnels. These are things that already exist as a means to alleviate traffic congestion. They aren't everywhere, and we could probably use more of them, but it's still a better solution than flying cars, because flying cars don't exist. Also, what would a flying car actually be useful for? We could categorize travel distances into 3 groups: short, medium, and long. Short distance travel could also be referred to as walking distance, so using a flying car for such a journey would be ostentatious at best. That's the arsehole category. Long distance travel, something on the order of hundreds or even thousands of miles, already has a solution. You take a train, an airplane, or if you really want, you can even drive your 2D car there. You could say you want to fly your car there, but a flying car would be slower than a jet and couldn't make such a long haul without needing to stop anyway. So that just leaves medium distance travel that you may normally do in your car. So let's say it's a radius of roughly 50 miles around your house. We already have an effective form of transportation for these distances, and they're called cars. For the average person, this should work out fine. If you live in the suburbs or a rural area, traveling this sort of distance without being stuck in gridlock traffic is likely an extremely common occurrence, and so there's no problem that needs to be solved here. For those in dense urban areas, there's a solution as well, and it's one that already utilizes the ability to travel in a third dimension. It's called the subway. Public transportation in the US could absolutely do with a lot of improvements, but it's still a lot better than the nightmare that would be millions of flying cars trying to navigate the skies of New York City. Aside from the fact that science fiction has been promising us flying cars for so long, there's not any practical reason for their creation. If you're looking for a shorter range and more individual, personalized transportation through the air than a commercial jet, we already have that as well. They're called helicopters. There's also a lot of work being done on drones that could be used as personal transport, though that's unlikely to become a practical solution either. Lessons learned from amphibious cars. Amphibious cars that could drive directly into the water and operate as boats, were created in the 1960s and were all the rage. I mean, you probably all remember taking many a drive out onto the lake during your childhoods for a nice family picnic on the water in your amphicar. Maybe you have kids of your own now who do the same every weekend. Oh, what's that? What's that? I hear you say not a single one of you watching has ever driven an amphibious car. Shocking. That's probably because they were stupid. They were short-lived. They were never popular. Just like the idea of a flying car should have been. Producing a high-quality amphibious car would be extremely difficult and definitely not commercially viable. While the Amphicar was reasonably priced compared to other cars at the time, it was far from high quality. It looks cool, but that's about it. It was a suboptimal car that could also drive into the water and operate as a suboptimal boat. The issue that made designing these cars so difficult is the fact that boats are boats and cars are cars. They're different things that require different design considerations. You can't just smash two arbitrary nouns together and expect it to become an amazing new invention like hamburger earmuffs. You'd be insane. When it comes to designing a flying car, The problem becomes even worse than the amphibious cars. Don't be fooled by the fact that they're both forms of transportation, because they aren't trying to do anything remotely similar to one another. Cars use torque to overcome the friction of the road surface, while flying vehicles use lift to overcome gravity. Those are totally different functions, so they require separate engines for each purpose, or maybe just one big old engine, but separate engines seem to be the more optimal solution to this idiotic problem. Whether it's two separate engines or one big-ass engine, it's going to be adding more weight to the flying car. The more it weighs, the harder it will be to make it fly. In order to keep our flying car light enough to actually be able to take off from the ground, it's going to need to be a pretty shitty car. In fact, it's going to need to be such a shitty car that it wouldn't even be legal to drive. Cars have all sorts of safety standards that all need to be met in order to be taken out on the road. Complying to these standards results in the cars being almost universally too heavy to ever achieve liftoff. There are less durable but more lightweight materials that could be used for a car, but they result in even more problems, which, well, we're going to address right now. Let's pretend flying cars exist. For the sake of argument, let's actually say that commercially viable cars have been created. What is this new form of transportation going to look like in the real world? Well, probably not that much more different from how current traffic looks. It's not like you could use your flying car anywhere you damn well want to. There would be major restrictions on them for numerous reasons. To start, it's unlikely you could fly your car in any residential area or commercial area. All urban locations would be out as well. Protected wildlife refuges are going to be a no-go, especially if there are protected avian species in the area. And on the topic of Mother Nature, let's not forget the weather as well. You're not going to be flying anywhere in the snow or in high winds, and driving on the highway can be scary enough when winds are high. Flying your car would easily be either suicide or negligent homicide. And oh yeah, if you wanted to drive at night, then your destination better have a dedicated and well-lit landing pad. That the dangers posed by flying cars are far too great for them to be used in any of the aforementioned areas. If your car breaks down on the highway, it sucks, but you can call the AAA from the side of the road. If your flying car breaks down mid-flight, well, you're fucked. You might even take a bunch of innocent people out with you. People are terrible drivers, and they drive under conditions they shouldn't all the time. So this would undoubtedly be happening with flying cars as well. It's not super common, but you've probably heard of at least one story of a car coming off the road and driving into someone's house by accident. Even with flying banned in residential areas, people are still going to act like stupid arseholes. So houses being destroyed by out-of-control flying cars seems to just be all but inevitable. And as we said, flying cars need to be lightweight in order to achieve flight, so they'll almost certainly be made out of fiberglass instead of more resilient metals, like steel. Fiberglass cars do exist, but there's two big reasons that they aren't terribly common. The first is cost, as it is much more expensive to produce than steel, and the other is durability. If you get into a minor accident with a normal car, it's not really a big deal. It's just a dent. You might not even bother exchanging insurance information. However, fiberglass, it doesn't dent, it cracks and it breaks, which would make the car unsafe for flight. But many drivers would ask themselves, is it really unsafe for flight? It doesn't look that bad, and I'm just flying a few miles back home. It's probably fine, right? I'm not gonna die. Oh, you're gonna die. Oh, you're gonna die. You're definitely gonna die. And then there's the noise. Helicopters, you might have noticed, they're pretty noisy. Drones are also loud. Cars are even loud. Flying cars would also be loud. We can design the engines to be as quiet as we possibly can, but once they travel above a certain speed, the aerodynamic noise is going to be unavoidable. This is a major problem for highways in residential areas, but we have a solution for that. Large walls can be built on the side of highways to reduce much of the noise pollution created by the cars on the highway. It's not perfect, but it is still helpful. This wouldn't be an option for flying cars, as having those walls would defeat the entire purpose of having flying cars at all. At that point, we could just build a multi-level bridge for land-based vehicles to alleviate the traffic concerns. The constant noise of cars flying about in any of the few places they'd be legally allowed to fly would be absolutely maddening and unavoidable. The fact that it could be described as maddening isn't very good either, as flying cars are predicted to be a major cause of stress and anxiety for people, not just from the noise, but from the fear of things falling out of the sky. It doesn't have to be a whole car either. It could be a hubcap, a muffler, or that diet soda someone threw out of the window because they ordered regular at the drive-thru. This general state of heightened anxiety among the population could result in higher incidents of road rage, or in this case, sky rage. Aggressive and erratic driving on the ground are scary enough, but it would be far worse 2,000 feet in the air. Basically, think of any dangerous behavior you have seen on the road before. With flying cars, all of that would still exist, yet the danger would just be ramped up to 11. You're an arsehole. This isn't necessarily why we don't have flying cars yet, but it is the only reason anyone wants one. You frequently find yourself sitting in traffic and wishing you could press a button to make your car fly into the air and speed past everyone else because you're better than them and shouldn't be subjected to the same torturous commute as everyone else, those plebeians. The thing is, if flying cars become commercially viable, that means everyone would have flying cars. If that's the case, you couldn't just press a button to fly over traffic because everyone else would also have that ability as well, and it would no longer be a solution to get out of a traffic jam. It would instead be a recipe for death, as dozens of cars collided into one another while simultaneously just tried to take off. But that's the thing, nobody is out here asking, where are our flying cars? It's just a bunch of arseholes saying, where is my flying car? We'd all love to put our sick Doc Brown shades on and say, where we're going, we don't need roads, before speeding away in the air past the parking lot of a highway. Are flying cars ever going to exist? Yeah, probably. They've been in development for over 100 years and companies are still working on it, so there will undoubtedly be flying cars produced. There actually were some made like 80 years ago using a detachable engine and wings, but they were too expensive and the market for flying cars was suspected to be too small, so nobody went ahead producing them for the mass market. The real question is, will flying cars be commercially viable? And the answer is not a chance, mate. They're pointlessly dangerous, and they don't solve any problem that needs solving. So, sure, the idea of a flying car seems cool, but it only seems cool because no one has them, and we all imagine a world in which we're the only person who has one. When everything is special, nothing is special. Is a Toyota Corolla cool? Not really. It's functional, and it's reliable, but everyone has a car, so it's hardly impressive. Would a Toyota Corolla have been cool in 1850? You're goddamn fucking right! Flying cars seem cool because no one has them. But if they became commercially available, then reality would set in. Flying cars are dangerous, they're loud, it's borderline impossible to design one that isn't both a subpar car and a subpar plane. Regulations would make them illegal to fly in any circumstance where you'd actually want to fly one. And most of all, they aren't actually solving a problem or filling a market need. They're never going to happen. And that's absolutely for the best.